In this video, we're going to explain gpview and some of the key functionality. You can see we're in the dashboard right now where we can see a snapshot of key information at a glance. We can quickly see, for example, the total fund value, IRR, multiple invested capital, and DPI, which is calculated for you, and what that looks like over time. Now, all of this is across all of your funds, but we can also quickly drill into a single fund or at a particular date, including historical quarters or even today's date. And we can also get a quick access view of our portfolio companies and click through. We can quickly see all of the key information about that specific company, from more qualitative terms like the status, the website, the founder name, etc., to a detailed log of transactions, a cap table, any qualitative updates about the company, valuations, metrics, and documents which you can upload and store. But we're getting ahead of ourselves because the first two sections of the menu is really about setting up in gpview. The first step will be setting up your funds. So these are your different vehicles. These could be, for example, Fund 1, Fund 2, or SPVs. And if you don't have multiple vehicles, you can just set up one and have all of your investments sitting in that one fund. But when you do add a fund, which can be done up there, either importing, exporting to Excel, or manually adding, you can add information, for example, what is the invested cap or the committed capital, the vintage year, the commitment amount. You can see a breakdown of portfolio companies within that fund, any limited partners within that fund, including by vehicle. You can see a breakdown of the invested capital transactions and also upload any documents as well. As mentioned, you can do the same for your portfolio companies. And we do actually facilitate both portfolio companies as well as funds that you've actually invested in, so a portfolio fund. So if that's of interest to you, we can do both. But for most of our customers, it's primarily portfolio companies. And within here, you can, again, drill down to the company, and we walk through a few of these things already. But I can see, for example, this company has an IRR of 3.7% and multiple invested capital of 1.1x. Moving on to transactions. So this is where you store all of the database of ins and outs from the fund. So which funds have invested when into which companies. And this is how we're able to calculate the total sum invested capital by company, by fund, etc. But you can drill down into any of these transactions and see more information about that particular transaction. The currency, the fund that made it, the date and how long you've held it, and various other things. And you'll notice that we do actually facilitate multiple types of transactions, whether that's just a simple equity, but we also do convertible notes, loans, preference shares, and other type. And each of these, depending on which you choose, will enable different types of fields. For example, for a convertible note, it could be things around the interest rate, discount rate, conversion cap, etc. And later on, you can always search by that information you've typed in. So for example, whether you're searching for a Series A transaction, or perhaps it's a follow-on, you can really filter and deep dive into all of your transactions. Now, you might be wondering, across your portfolio, how do we know the multiple invested capital, the IRR, and calculate that for you over time? Well, it's really two inputs. The first we've already talked about, which is your transactions. The second is your valuation. So what is the current valuation of the invested capital you've made across your portfolio companies and portfolio funds, if that's relevant? So we do actually we've got a valuations module where you can edit your vals, and you don't have to change these. You'll notice that some of these are just, we haven't added a val, and that just stays at investment value equals investment cost. And therefore your multiple invested capital and IRR are just flat. But if you did want to go in and edit your vals, we do have a comprehensive method of inputting it where you can adjust it and see the impact on your multiple invested capital IRR instantly. You can track the entire value company, and you can also have a few different ways of valuing it, for example, based on share price, and that will adjust everything in here. We've got a pretty cool module called metrics data, and this is basically for each of your portfolio companies. You can see them over here. You can set up what we call metrics, and these are things like financial metrics or operational or other, where for each of your companies, you can set up a database of numbers by month or view it quarterly or yearly as well, and track the performance either in chart, table, or report view, where you can quickly see across this particular company your total revenue for the month, EBITDA, and what are the other metrics you've set up versus last year versus last month, etc. And a really cool thing about gpview is we can actually facilitate the collection of that data. Of course, you can always export this and import this or edit yourself at any time. But if you did actually want to request this from your portfolio company, we've got a module where you can send out campaigns to your portfolio companies, collect data, for example, for Jan to September, for example, customize the email, and they'll actually get a magic link they can click on. They don't need a username or password. Click on the link, fill in the form, submit the data to you on a regular basis, and automate that collection process so you don't actually have to keep uploading this yourself. Now, once all the data is in the system, that's where gpview really shines. We've got analytics and reporting capability. Now, the difference between the two is analytics is more internal. You can slice and dice your data, deep dive into things. For example, in analytics, we could look at all of our portfolio companies and rank them by multiple invested capital or distributions, etc., highest to lowest. So we can see visually the performance. We can also see who needs attention, who's the top performer, and another table ranking of our companies. We can do the same for our funds if you've got portfolio funds. And we can also see and deep dive how we've allocated our capital across different variables. And this could be on invested capital or valuation basis. We could be, for example, based on sector of the companies you've invested in. So when you actually add those companies to portfolio, you'll fill in the sector, the year, the geography, etc. And that way we can actually really dynamically filter this data. And you can see, okay, we've got quite a big investment in cybersecurity, for example. It'd be great to have another investment in edtech, for example. So I've got a more distributed portfolio. But it could also be based on vintage year, so you're not too concentrated in the ZERP period in 2021 and so forth. And speaking of that, once you've got a lot of data in the system, it's sometimes easy to miss things, right? So we built out this risk portfolio so you can actually see, and we can actually proactively flag these potential risks to you rather than you having to look through it and miss things potentially, right? So for example, we've got a couple of companies which potentially might be running out of cash, might have unsustainable EBITDA burn, and this is all linked into the data based on the metrics module. So if you've set up EBITDA as a metric, we've got lots of default metrics you can choose from, which then link through to our rules. We can actually actively flag these potential risks to you. And this could be around metrics, but it could also be around invested capital, valuations data, concentration, and various other rules we've built in. You can also look at your funds. So if you've got multiple funds, fund vehicles, you can compare performance. And you can even run analytics on co-investors, although I haven't set this up in this particular account, but you could look at all of your cap tables across your companies. So for example, go into a cap table, add in who your co-investors are, and then run analytics around who you've done the most deals with and vice versa. Now, reports is your more formal reporting module where you can actually run specific templates or even custom reports and run the same report at different timestamp periods. So for example, you might run your fund and company report at the June quarter, then the September quarter, then the December quarter. And the beautiful things about these reports is you'll be able to see these in a list of recent reports, which you can then access later. You can always print these to PDF. You can download it. You can share it to investors. We have an investor portal available. So we could go into one particular report like this one, give it a name like September quarter, choose a fund, period, add in some commentary if you like. And you can see it's generated a report, which has got our fund performance at the front, it's got our portfolio company summary, and then a deep dive into each of our companies, pulling information that we've filled in. And because it's all live, it's all pulling this information super quickly. And then we can save this report or we can print it to PDF. We can also run some cool scenarios about a fund. So based on the current portfolio and future investments, we can set some assumptions around exit, returns, and dates. And from there, we can run some modeling around different scenarios. So based on how much follow-on reserve we want to leave, what's our management fees, we can see how much is left based on actual deployed, the follow-ons, the reserves, in terms of what's left to deploy, and fees. And then we can run some analytics around that remaining investable capital in terms of different stages, what that will look like across your net portfolio performance, and various other analytics as well. We've also got an interesting little tool of pipelines. So you can actually track your early stage deal flow, move it between stages, track your pipeline value, and when it actually converts into a deal, you can convert into a portfolio company. It'll flow through to your portfolio. So it's all integrated and linked and working really well. Plus, you can probably get some, dollar savings if you're using other tools, and just all integrate it into gpview into a central place. Once you're ready to go live, you can add other members of your team. You can control what they can access, what their role is. You can add contacts, both from your portfolio companies, but also investors. Portfolio companies, so you can actually send your metrics requests from the metrics module. And LPs, if you add them, you can actually set up an investor portal where they can log in separately to the app and view just their reports, whether that's their capital calls, or we can actually send reports from our reporting module, like their fund, September quarter report, and they'll see that just for their own interest. You can manage your subscription here and also your settings over here as well. So that's the quick overview of gpview. Hope to have you on the platform soon. We do have a ability to do a free trial on our website. Just go to the top, click sign up, and you can start playing around with it now. But you can also book in a sales call if you like. We've got a button on our dashboard where you can book directly in with our sales team and see a live demo. But otherwise, hoping to see you soon on our platform.